I just woke up. I had two dreams. I don't know if we'll be able to get two in one, but God is so amazing. So I want to get the second dream first before I give the first dream, because the first dream, the second dream just blew my mind. And yeah. So I was at, it looked like maybe, I don't know, it was a school, was it a nursing home, at a facility, I don't know where it was. But anyway, because I was outside and I was walking, and I seen this lady that I know. She was walking, and I know the woman was in a wheelchair. She had a stroke, and she was in a wheelchair. And I seen her walking, and I said, I'm going to call her Sarah. I said, Sarah, girl, you walking. Sarah. I was like, Sarah walking. She in her blue jean skirt. She had a nice little figure like she always had. And she was walking. And I just got so happy, so I went behind her. And I said, Sarah, you walking. She was like, yeah. And so she walked on. It looked like, I'm going to call it a cafeteria. And there was a lot of people in there. And I started I had my video just showing the miracle of what God had done. God healed her. She was no longer in the wheelchair. She was walking. And so she got amongst other people, and the preacher it was a preacher there. He was praying with other people. So I want to say it was a nursing home. And so the pastor, he was praying for other people, and he saw her. And the pastor who was praying for her actually was one who he had been to prison himself. I'll tell you about that. So when he saw her, he's, started praying over her and this and that. And so the man, the pastor had said, gave a testimony how God had healed her. And so, I'm just looking like people be starstruck. Celebrities, I don't get down with that. And I was just starstruck at what God had done. Yahweh had healed this woman that I personally know that was in a wheelchair. And so she was just walking, and the people were just, just so kind of quiet with the testimony. And I was videoing it. Not just her, just the lady just about the testimony. And so the preacher, she was walking out, and I said, Pastor, I said, God has released you from your prison too. And he was like, well, my testimony. And I said, yes, it was. I said, you was in prison, and God kept your mind. And his mama started shouting. I knew the guy who was there released prison and his mama. She started shouting. I said, because God kept you while you was in that prison. And I said, God is so good. He was like, well, yeah, you're right. And so I caught up with Sarah. I said, Sarah, I said, oh my God, I am so thankful that God healed you, that you walking. And she said, Mary, what was the big deal? You acting like I can't walk. I wasn't going to walk. I said, no, it wasn't that, baby. I said, you got to understand. You was in a wheelchair. You could not walk. Your children had to take care of you. You could not walk. You was in a wheelchair sitting on your porch, and you could not walk. And I said, and to see that God has healed you. And I said, baby, that's a testimony. God instantly healed you. You didn't have surgery. And God allowed you to get up and walk, baby. I said, baby, that's a testimony. That's something to rejoice about. And tears started running from her eyes because she didn't understand the value of God had healed her. That God had gave her legs back to walk. That God strengthened her. And she was walking perfect. And I said, that's why I'm rejoicing. It didn't hit her what God had did to her. It was just a normal thing he did in OLL. And so when she started crying, we walked back in. And she said, Mary. And I said, the reason why God healed you, God said he healed you because, and she was like, well, why God heal me and not other people? God said he healed you because every time I came to see you, you had a smile on your face. Every time I sat on your porch, you were like, you had a smile on your face. I'm talking to you like, yeah, your speech wasn't that good, but the woman had a smile on her face. Every time I go see her, this woman got a smile on her face. And she was like, Mary, go back in and tell somebody else my testimony. So we walked back in the facility. And when we walked back in, it was another lady that I know that's her supposed to be friend. Which your lady is supposed to be her friend. This woman had on the red scrubs. And she was sitting around other people. And I put on my recorder. I didn't want to video her. I was recording a testimony. Because I need to tell the world what God had done. And I said, let me tell y'all. Every time I said, let me tell y'all her testimony, the lady in the red would interrupt. And I'd break again. I said, let me tell y'all what God did. The woman in the red will interrupt again. I said, let me tell y'all what God has done. The lady interrupted again. This time the woman got up and she gave her a hug while I was trying to tell a testimony. And Sarah was standing up there. Sarah gave her a hug. And then other people were just sitting around. But when that lady in the red, her supposed to be friend, got up and walked out, I said, okay, well, let me give the testimony. And when I'm trying to get a testimony, I said, let me tell y'all what God had done. In my excitement, getting back in queue, Sarah walked away. I was like, Sarah, let me tell it. Sarah walked away and walked away ugly. While I'm trying to tell her testimony that she told me to go in to tell her testimony. And Sarah walked out side to side. God had restored her back into position where she was able to go back to work. And she walking side to side, walked out that door like I was nothing. Like God didn't just heal her. That I just showed her and made her understand and realize how God had healed her. Sarah walked out that door. And that's when the preacher walked out behind her. And I was telling the preacher, you had been healed. God delivered you from your prison. And to him, it was nothing. I said, yeah, but God kept your mind. So when they walked out, my feeling was hurt. I had told them, they were like, Mary, I said, no, I'm not feeling hurt. I said, yeah, I'm feeling hurt. I said, but it's okay. And in a dream, I heard God say that when I heal you, when I restore you, don't you turn your back on me. When I heal you and I restore you, don't walk away from me like I didn't just do a miracle for you. And that's what she had done. She had walked away because she was back walking. Everything that God had brought her through, now she was back on her own. And the dream about every time, I had 2 dreams about her before, and both times she had died. And every time I dreamed about her, she had died. Her sister was over to her house. The same exact dream. I want to say maybe like a year ago or something like that. 2 dreams. And I went to God in prayer for the Lord to heal her. God to heal her. So in that dream late this morning, God healed her. And she walked away. You better do right, girl. Yeah. When God heal you, don't turn your back on him. Testify about his goodness. You guys be blessed.